Welcome to today's webinar, AI and Archives, Advancing Archival Engagement. Today's webinar is hosted by the Expert Group for Research and Outreach Services, EGRSO, from the International Council on Archives. The members of our group include our chair, Dr. Nempombe Sarambe, professor in the Department of Information Science, University of South Africa, Johanna Smith, Director, General Information and Collection at the Canadian Library of Parliament, Dr. Maria Castrillo, Head of Collections and Access and Research at the Imperial War Museums, United Kingdom, Dr. Dennis Hormuth, Head of the Hamburg University Archives, Germany, Andrew Payne, Head of Education and Outreach at the National Archives of the UK, and I'm Pamela Wright, Chief Innovation Officer at the U.S. National Archives and Records Administration, also known as NARA, and I'm thrilled to be the moderator for this webinar. Today, we will explore how artificial intelligence is transforming access to archival records and addressing diverse societal information needs. We will discuss innovative AI applications that enhance engagement with historical documents and shape the future of archival research. To delve into the intersection of AI and archival access, we've gathered leading experts in the field from around the globe, so this should be an exciting hour. Please feel free to put any questions you have in the Q&A box, and over the course of the meeting, we'll get to them as time allows. So please use the Q&A box for your questions and comments. Okay. Today's first presentation is Artificial Intelligence Guidelines at the Canadian Library of Parliament. Presenting will be Johanna Smith, Director, General Information and Collection at the Canadian Library of Parliament. Johanna Smith joined the Library of Parliament in September 2023. She was previously at Library and Archives of Canada for 17 years, including 13 years of executive responsibilities that varied from the transfer of digital records to reference service, access to information and privacy, reconciliation, partnerships, and major digitization initiatives. Johanna's co-presenter is Anne-Marie Genin-Charette, General Counsel. As an experienced in-house counsel, Anne-Marie practices in the area of copyright, labor and employment law, contracts and procurement, and administrative law. Since March 2020, she's been working as General Counsel at the Library of Parliament in Ottawa. As a library executive, Anne-Marie provides legal advice and strategic direction to the Library of Parliament to all its sectors of operations. And as the chair of the library's AI working group, Anne-Marie provides leadership on AI-related issues. So now I'll turn the floor over to Johanna and Anne-Marie.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? You can hear me. I'm going to assume you can hear me. It's pretty exciting. I was just distracted looking at the chat, and we are from all over the world. So good morning, good evening, good night, good midnight. Thanks for being with us today. We're really excited to speak with you. We're going to dive right in. And Marie, I'm not sure if your screen is still showing. Is the presentation showing? I think I clicked something funny, so I think it's probably fine.
Yes, it's showing.
It's looking good? Okay. So I'll dive right in to slide 3. I wanted to start by telling you a little bit about the Library of Parliament and what we do, because number one, we're not in archives. So thank you for having us here to talk about our work. Obviously, there's a big overlap in our mandate with archival work. So we believe that our guidelines that we've developed could be quite pertinent to you. But first, just so that you know where we're coming from, we're a legislative library that serves the Canadian Parliament, National Parliament. That's a bicameral institution, so it has a Senate and a House of Commons, and we serve both of those. Our parliamentary librarian reports to the speakers of each house. We have 432 employees who are creating, managing, and delivering authoritative, reliable, and relevant information. So that part of the mandate is going to come back as we look at the seriousness with which we approach our guidelines. We're nonpartisan. We don't associate with the political party that is in government at the time. We're serving all members. You can see on the right side of the slide a little bit about what we do. So we have a traditional library function in terms of acquiring and providing information and access to publications. But in addition, we have a very robust research service where we have researchers and analysts that actually attend committee meetings in Parliament and support parliamentarians with research work. And we also have responsibility for all of the public education programs about Parliament. So we run the physical tours where people want to visit the buildings, and we also have a strong outreach to teachers across the country who may want to have kits that help them learn about civics and national parliaments. So if we go to the next slide, we can go to the one even following. So we started to think about AI, I guess around the same time as everybody else, maybe a little late. In 2022, we could see some of the generative AI tools becoming much more prevalent in the public consciousness, in use. And we realized we needed to dig a little deeper into this because the use was starting to happen within our employees, but also by parliamentarians. So in 2023, we set up a working group within the library to look at how AI tools are being used in other organizations, assess some of the considerations from financial, legal, ethical, information technology, information management, and library professional considerations. Look at what the best practices would be for responsible and effective use. So are these tools actually working for our type of organization? And then identify functions and initiatives across the organization that could use AI. We were certainly seeing a strong use for AI tools for translation because we're a bilingual institution, English and French. We provide our services in both languages. We could also see it becoming used to support the research function. So brainstorming around research, but also potentially providing research sources. That was a fine line that you'll see. We also could see potential use for tagging and cataloging our records. We provide a current news source, so some of those news tags also could be used by AI. So it was starting to be used by us, and again, by parliamentarians to research facts and support their policy. So we wanted to be really sure we had good advice for them on how that might be working or not working. So on the next slide, just a little overview, and you're probably all well aware of some of the challenges and concerns about AI, but maybe a little review or a different way of presenting this. One of the main concerns for us in terms of being an authoritative institution was the fact that the AI tools do hallucinate, which means that they can provide content that might be incomplete, out of date, inaccurate. This is not appropriate for us and can present a huge risk, obviously, if we were using it for factual information. Number two, the data sets that the AI generative tools use to create content can be biased and prejudiced. They're really reflecting potentially a predominant cultural or historical norm that may not present contemporary, relevant to the moment information. So we know that there can be a bias and prejudice in the results. That can lead, number three, our keywords, misinformation and disinformation. This can be facts that are wrong. It can be facts that are not attributed to the right source. This is where there is a potentially large threat to democratic institutions and can weaken the trust that our public has in us. Number four, information security. So if you feed in prompts or queries that contain sensitive information about people, or particularly people, but other sensitive information, it's not clear how the tools may take that data and reuse it or store it or build on it. So that lack of transparency is a concern for us in terms of information security. Number five, copyright. We know that the data sets could contain copyrighted information that's not necessarily attributed when it's fed back to us. So any results could potentially be infringing copyright and third-party rights as it's presented. And finally, authorship. It's very difficult to validate the information and the sources if you don't know where it came from. So that assessment of the authority of the information could be a problem for us. It really, for us and for all of us as information institutions, can come to the heart of our mandates in terms of being trusted sources of information. In particular for us, as our key client base is Canadian legislatures and their reliance on us for that impartial and objective information and services. So you know, you may think, oh, these are potential speculative concerns, but we know that they are real consequences if information in the tools is not used properly. And we have an example here that came out of the Australian Parliament. So very interesting to us because we have a very similar model in Canada. In this example, a group of of academics specializing in accounting used an AI tool. It was Bard AI to prepare a submission for a parliamentary committee studying ethics and professional accountability of the Big Four consulting firms. So they included in their presentation allegations of serious wrongdoing that they had taken from an AI generated tool that falsely attributed those wrongdoings to the firms. Parliament began to consider these accusations and quickly realized that they were false. But this is believed to be the first time that a parliamentary inquiry grappled with the issue of artificial intelligence generating these kinds of false accusations. And then they're covered by parliamentary privilege. So it meant that they couldn't have any lawsuit against them afterwards. So it really created a trap for these companies. So they've now been corrected. Those sections of the report have been removed, and a new document is being prepared for the Australian Senate, or at least it was at the time. I believe that that's a pretty recent case. So just an example of how quickly a serious impact can result from that kind of false information. So once we identified those risks, we passed them on to the working group identified them and began to work on what kind of guidelines could surround our work to prevent and mitigate those risks from coming to fruition. So I'll pass it over to my colleague Anne-Marie, who was the chair of that working group and led the work to develop the guidelines.
Johanna mentioned when we went to and we did our assessments of those various considerations, the best way to move forward was to develop a set of guidelines that our employees who wanted to use the technology could use it, and in this way they would feel, instead of banning it outright, the guidelines would empower employees and also help them in making decisions. Because if people don't understand the risk of technology that they're using, it becomes even more of a liability to the organization, because they may want to do something even more in a unsafe way than not.
Anne-Marie, I'm sorry to interrupt. You're going in and out. Your sound is going in and out. So I don't know but people are having trouble hearing it. So it's great sometimes, and then it fades out.
Can you hear me now properly?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Oh, I don't know. Try again. Say something else.
So our guidelines were based on the ones from the UK Parliament and the Government of Canada. They're partners we work with, and also that similar realities and also similar environment that they want to make sure that it's that the information that they provide to their clients is ultimately and as I mentioned, really what we wanted to do is being as practical as possible, because our employees may not have all the time in the world to go into the terms and conditions of all of the different tools and then make all of these assessments. So we wanted to make it easy for them once they wanted to use the tool. So we really focused on generative AI.
Anne-Marie, I'm so sorry to interrupt again. Maybe we could do it without the headphones. I don't know. It's still going in and out.
Is it better now?
Keep so far, maybe.
can you hear me? Perfect. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
I just needed to disconnect with the Bluetooth. All right, let's get back on the horse. And then here we go. I love seeing the little hearts encouraging me along. Right. So yes, we focused on generative AI because we knew that our employees are doing research, but they're not doing that very scientific building algorithms and those kind of thing. And also our clients, they may be sophisticated, but again, they're the kind of the AI that they were using the most would be generative AI. So that's why we decided to focus on work on this model, because this is where we could address most of the concern and catch most of the intended use. And the guideline, we wanted them to be evergreen and also review, and especially since the technology is developing at a rapid pace. We also included resources for more information and a glossary. And as Johanna mentioned, our employee, we're really using a lot the automated translation tool. As a bilingual organization, sometimes you have to work in your second language and you want to make sure that your translation, you can translate something very quickly and not having to go to translator every time. So we also add a separate guidelines for how to use the translation tools. So I'll go into some of the bigger principles that we add in the guidelines. And the way that the document was built is that under each of the principle, we would go into a bit of details how employees could apply them. And we also develop a associating FAQ to accompany the document. So one of the first step, and I think is also what really drives the use of AI, is making sure that when you use it, it's actually something, you use it for something useful. You use it as a support for your work, and you don't delegate the whole work to AI, because we also want to continue building on our clients' trust that we're not asking a machine to do all of the work, that the human is also involved in making important decisions. We can not necessarily on research, but you can also think on matters of employment, or if we have to make decision. And then that also builds into the second point about using the tools to support decision making instead of having the tool making it instead. One of the concern was about sensitive information. So we really tried to make the point to employees that they should not put anything confidential or protected in a tool, because we don't know where the information is stored, and especially if employees are dealing with materials that comes from in-camera proceeding, that it's not meant to be known in a public domain. And when we talked about using tool in a safe manner, is especially if your information that you want to put in the tool could be personal information, you may want to think about depersonalizing it or de-anonymizing it before you make the decision. So let's say you want to have specific information, you want some information on and then a particular member of parliament is asking the question, well, maybe remove the member of parliament's name and then enter your prompt. And as an organization who prides itself with excellence as one of our guiding principles, we also want to make sure that everything we provide to our client can be relied on. So that's why implementing a fact-checking procedure is important. And we also tell an employee that they should be able to identify the source when they use the information. And if they have any concern, then either consult their colleagues or managers, or maybe not use the AI tool if they're not able to assess whether or not what they're receiving from the tool is correct or not. And so the other point that we wanted to make was about biases and prejudice. And that was a risk that we identify early. And it's something that's really prevalent if you use images or video generator, because they tend to even amplify more the biases that are present in society. And that's why we also in our FAQ will provide even more like context and an explanation on like what it would be what would be a proper way of using it, and maybe even a bit more perspective, because it's also where the risk to reputation can be increased. We also wanted again to ensure that our clients maintain the trust with them. We wanted to make sure that if there is a sufficient or significant part of content that was generated that by AI that we're using in the public sphere or giving to client, that there's a disclaimer including in it. And then we did provide some more explanation of what the disclaimer would be, what's the threshold to put it, just so that the clients knows that yes, there's AI, but we've done everything impossible to check to making sure that the information we supplemented was accurate. And then the citing source of information and properly attributing authorship. This is something that are especially for our analysts section, that's something that they already do. So that's something that should continue to do when using AI. And also considering we don't know what the tool stores or necessarily where it is, if there's ways that people can limit the information that the tool collects, either by there's sometimes option that users can use to not have the information they use in prompt being used for training. So that's something that if they can use it, we recommend that they use. And the last two items, it's mostly it would mostly come in play for meeting the official languages right and accessibility testings if we were to procure them. So at this time, our employees are using tools that are publicly available. We don't have one that we've bought specifically for the library and procure them. So that's so if that were the case, we would conduct an equity analysis, especially looking around what the data set is, and make sure they respect official language requirements and accessibility standards. This next portion is about really looking back into the project and looking at what went well and also what the working group is considering doing in the future. So if we're thinking about lesson learned, one thing that really helped us was having a cross-sector membership. So we had experts in information management, we had librarians, we had legal experts like myself, people in procurement, we had analysts who were using the tools on the ground, and communication experts. So that meant that we were able to really take advantage of the variety of knowledge, and that helped us having a product that could be understandable and useful for an organization which has a lot of moving parts. And also the working group, almost all of the employees, it was a volunteer assignment. So they're doing this in addition to their usual tasks. So all of the employees are really motivated and also keen on using this technology, and also bringing some of their knowledge to their colleagues. The group is a composition of employees and manager, and myself as an executive. And it's really interesting having people at different stages of their career. We have brand new librarian, but also librarians who've been working for 30 years, and all of them are want to make it work. And like the librarians who has 30-year experience, like, well, I was there when the internet was invented and I'm still here, I'm still useful. So I don't think AI is going to do anything about that. It's just about making sure that we understand the technology and making it work. So that was something that was really nice to have, and also create some mentorship opportunities at different level. So working in Parliament, we also have a parliamentary calendar that we have to take into account, especially since the working group is something that people are doing on top of their normal work. So the way that we've been able to do is some sections may be more busy when Parliament is session, and other times less. So we were able to spread out the work that was assigned to different people. Like in the summer, we were doing research everyone separately because it was difficult to meet as a group. And then when we reconvened, everyone was able had done what they could have done by themselves. And then in the fall, we could meet in little groups and then have that collaboration. So the drafting itself of the guidelines, so that was mostly done by the people who had communication and legal expertise, was straightforward. What did take us a bit longer was implementing the guidelines, because when we had a more final product, and then we came to have discussions with some group, we had, and especially in our research division, because that's where it was mostly used at where the interest was to use it the most. There was some additional questions, and we had to do some more consultation, and especially with the middle level manager, because they would be the one who, when employees had questions or when they wanted some guidance on how to understand it better, they would come for questions. So was having more discussion with them, and also trying to have some materials that they can look for training, and just understanding a bit better the technology to help the employees. So now that the guidelines have been published, the working group is still working, and we have, as Johanna mentioned, our mandate is quite big. So at the moment, what's really interesting us is looking into exploratory testing. So we're looking at different tools that are available to the public, and see how they can be useful in a library settings, and also in a research setting. At the moment, we've concluded testings in the areas of visuals, so images, video. We also looked into how they can be used for reference services, and as well as for media monitoring, and also data analysis and visualization. We're continuing testing in our second phase for tools that are more for research purposes. So reference services is a type of research, but we wanted to see if we can have some tool and go a bit deeper, because our analysts are mostly doing some policy work in different areas. Legal research as well, because we do have some legal researcher on our team, and continuing a bit with the media monitoring. And also some of the members of the working group have been going to a lot of conferences, and have seen what other institutions are doing. So they're coming back with all sorts of ideas, and we're going to look in the next few months to see how we can put them in, see them, especially around how they can be more implemented on the library side of our work. We're also excited to have a community of practice in place. So this will be hosted on Teams, and that would be a virtual space in which employees can exchange and ask information about training, especially if they have some tips on prompt or other things on how they can talk about anything around AI. And we're also looking into setting up some awareness activities around lunch and learn, and also more formal training. Johanna?
I think that's it. We have a couple of questions. I see in the Q&A. Pam, we can answer those in chat or out loud as you prefer. We'll do it in the chat. Oh, okay.
Well, why don't you go ahead, Johanna?
I can do one quickly. The question about whether legislators have been abiding by these guidelines are directed at staff of the library. We don't have the role of telling parliamentarians what to do. We serve them. So we're starting with guidelines for our staff only. And as Anne-Marie mentioned, we do see that there is a need for training. So that's where we see we can intervene and help parliamentarians, just to be sure that they're aware of the risks and the level of appropriateness there. There's another question around the energy costs, and it's certainly something that and Natalie, I don't know if the working group has considered that directly, but I would say that it's do you want to go for that?
Yeah, no, it's not something that we're looking at the moment, but that's something that was definitely raised and something we can look in the future.
Okay, thank you so much, and keep the questions coming in the Q&A box, and Joanna and Anne-Marie will continue to answer those in the Q&A. Thank you for your timely presentation. Guidelines for the use of technology have never been more critical to the work we do in library and archives. So just a reminder to everybody who's listening, you've got some questions for Joanna and Anne-Marie, put them in the Q&A box. All right, thank you. And now we will turn to our next presentation, which is using artificial intelligence to improve access to Revolutionary War pension files. Our presenter, Carol Lagundo, is from the U.S. National Archives and Records Administration. Carol is the Director of Digital Partnerships and Outreach within the Office of Innovation. She has spent most of her NARA career managing IT software development projects to describe and provide online access to NARA's holdings. She currently manages digital partnerships and NARA's innovative digital reference platform, History Hub, as well as NARA's online chat program, Ask the Archives. So Carol, I'll turn it over to you next.
Thanks, Pam. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see my screen and can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thanks. So hello around the world, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today about how the U.S. National Archives and Records Administration is leveraging artificial intelligence to improve access to our records. My name is Carol Lagundo, and I'm the Director of Digital Partnerships and Outreach within the Office of Innovation at the U.S. National Archives. So this first slide, I just wanted to put in to give you some sense of context as to the breadth of our holdings at NARA. The records that we have date from pre-federal times to present, and most of the records that we have are textual, more than 13.5 billion pieces of paper, but they also come in a wide variety of media, such as microfilm, maps and charts, still pictures, motion pictures, video recordings, sound recordings, and electronic records. The National Archives Catalog is the online portal to the records held at the National Archives and information about those records. It's the main way of describing our holdings and also provides access to electronic records and digitized versions of our holdings. Our catalog currently contains more than 300 million digital objects and more than 13 million contributions, which are tags, transcriptions, and comments that are added by volunteers worldwide. We refer to these volunteers as citizen archivists. The catalog received significant engagement. In a one-year period from April 2023 to March 2024, the catalog received 88 million page views from 1.95 million users, and more than 50% of those users were returning users, and average engagement time was more than 7 minutes and 42 seconds. I want to talk just briefly about our Citizen Archivist program, which we launched in 2015. Because prior to the emergence of AI, it was solely citizen archivists adding tags, transcriptions, and comments to enhance the discoverability of the records in our catalog. Anyone can participate in NARA's Citizen Archivist program. It's 100% online. It's open to anyone, anywhere. The only requirement is a catalog user account through login.gov, and there are no deadlines. You can contribute at your own pace. NARA community managers curate and publish missions on our website. They're topic-based and added and updated on a regular basis. We also feature individual records categorized by skill level for beginner, intermediate, and advanced users. Our transcription mission page currently features more than 15 transcription missions to choose from, including the Revolutionary War Pension File Transcription and Tagging Mission, which I'll be discussing in depth, Unidentified Flying Objects, African American Patriots, and more. In collaboration with the National Park Service, the National Archives launched a transcription mission in June 2023 to transcribe Revolutionary War pension files. The series includes more than 2.5 million pages of 18th and 19th century handwritten records. These records tell the story of America's first veterans and include a wealth of information, such as names, age, rank, unit, period of service, date and place of marriage, and more. Our initial goal was to transcribe all 2.5 million images by America's 250th anniversary in 2026. The 18th and 19th century handwriting can be difficult to read and transcribe, most of it in cursive. Since we launched the project in June 2023, more than 4,000 citizen archivists have transcribed 100,000 pages. At the current rate, that'll take until 2046 to completely transcribe this series with just humans. Just to give you a little bit of background on NARA's use of AI, we first used AI in 2022 when we launched the 1950 census website. We collaborated with Amazon to train their AI ML OCR tool, Textract, to read the census enumeration forms and mid-century handwriting to extract names. The website launch represented the first time that a searchable data set of names and locations for the census was available simultaneously with the release of the digital copies. We designed the website with transparency and collaboration in mind. As shown in this screenshot of a 1950 census search result, the AI extracted names are clearly labeled as such, and humans are still an important part of the process. The names are not always extracted correctly by the AI, and so we included this transcription module so that people could go in and actually correct the names that weren't transcribed correctly or at all, and that would be added to the search index to improve discoverability. Realizing how long it would take to transcribe the Revolutionary War pension files, we started to look at how we might leverage partnerships in AI to improve the discoverability of those records faster. FamilySearch has been a digitization partner of NARA for many years now. And FamilySearch also uses AI to transcribe images into text, making them searchable. We formed a partnership with FamilySearch in April this year to make the 2.5 million Revolutionary War pension files discoverable. The partnership goals, or the framework of that partnership, was beneficial to both parties. It would improve the FamilySearch AI transcription model by giving them the completed transcriptions that had been done by our citizen archivist of the Revolutionary War transcriptions, so that they could train their AI model and then produce AI-generated transcriptions for all 2.5 million images after training the model. Then they would provide all those transcriptions to NARA, and we would add them into our catalog as partner-contributed content. And this would enable NARA's citizen archivists to review and correct the AI-generated transcriptions. So in terms of processing those Revolutionary War pension images with AI, as I mentioned, FamilySearch added the 35,000 completed transcriptions that our citizen archivists did to their existing English language model, which includes 4.3 million images. They compared their enhanced model descriptions to our citizen archivist completed transcriptions, and then trained their system by running all the data sets from FamilySearch and NARA 3 times. The outcome is a transcription system 90% correct on all the words. FamilySearch delivered the AI-generated transcriptions to NARA last month, and we're currently in the process of developing functionality in our catalog to display those transcriptions as partner-contributed content. That functionality will be released to production later this fall. So I'll be walking through mock-ups of that functionality and what it'll look like. In this first mock-up, you'll see that one of the Revolutionary War pension images is on the left side of the screen. And on the right side is the extracted text displayed, showing that it's NARA partner contributed from FamilySearch and it's AI machine generated. In this mock-up, the user decides to review and correct the AI-generated transcription. The user will click on the transcription, which will open the transcription panel, and then they can start transcribing by clicking the Start Transcribing button. The user can then copy and paste that extracted text into the transcription panel. And after pasting the extracted text into the transcription panel, the user can now correct and publish the transcription. So what are next steps? AI isn't perfect, and humans are going to continue to be in the loop to review and correct transcriptions. Our hope is that this will significantly increase the completion rate of these Revolutionary War pension file transcriptions, and we're also actively working to identify additional sets of records in the catalog for which AI-generated transcriptions could be part of our partnership with FamilySearch. After we add the transcriptions to our catalog later this fall and roll out that functionality, community managers will launch a promotion campaign across our social media platforms, in our catalog newsletter, which has about 380,000 subscribers. And then the National Park Service will also amplify that on their social media platforms and engage their National Park Service volunteers to help review and correct those transcriptions. And then, as I mentioned, we're working on identifying additional data sets and other digital partnership opportunities. And to that end, I also want to talk about another project that we're working on, which is a prototype AI research assistant called Archival. It's powered by Google Vertex, and it supports natural language queries. So you'll be able to ask Archie a question and receive AI-generated summaries with footnotes and links to sources in the digitized documents in our catalog. We're still working on the prototype, training it on a small set of records, but we're hoping to roll it out in the next few months. This is going to give us an opportunity to gather feedback from staff, stakeholders, and the public. And then I just want to speak about the Responsible AI Federal Framework. So NARA's responsible exploration and experimentation with AI tools happens in the context of a larger US federal framework. The executive order on promoting the use of trustworthy AI and the blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights outlines the principles and provides guidance to transparency, safety, risk management, ethics, anti-discrimination protections, and data privacy. Innovation, collaboration, and community and stakeholder engagement are important to the trustworthy use of AI at federal agencies. The U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, developed an AI risk management framework that federal agencies like NARA apply to ensure the responsible use of AI. And then the Office of Management and Budget provides guidance and requirements for agencies related to AI governance, innovation, and risk management. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. It's, from our first use of AI technology with the publication of the 1950 census in 2022 to the various experimental projects we're doing today, it is a super exciting time to work at NARA. It looks, Carol, like there's several questions in the Q&A for you. So I don't know if we want to pick one out. Maybe you can answer those in the Q&A as we go through the rest of this meeting. But thanks for everybody for their interest in this, and thank you, Carol, for the presentation.
Thanks, Pam, and I will make an effort to answer those questions directly in the chat.
Great, thank you. All right, so we're on to our last but not least, our final presentation. It is using AI to support the teacher working with archive resources in the history classroom, applications, resources, and approaches. Presenting will be Andrew Payne, who is the head of education and outreach at the National Archives of the UK, where he leads the development and delivery of services for schools, teachers, communities, families, and young people. He is a qualified teacher of history and IT, has over 3 decades of experience in using technology to engage students with their study of the past. Andrew's co-presenter is Ben Walsh. Ben is the trust lead for history at the David Ross Education Trust, a federation of primary and secondary schools in England. He has been involved in history education for over 35 years and has worked as an examiner, textbook author, trainer, and has collaborated on many projects with the UK National Archives. So I will turn the floor over to Andrew and Ben.
Thank you, Pam, and good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. I can see that we have a truly global audience, which is fantastic. And so Ben is going to drive the presentation for me, so I'll keep asking him to move along at various intervals. But just to get started. So AI is, in education terms, is, I suppose, the next new big thing. And those of us that have worked in education for the past 30 years or more will know that, you know, the next new big thing comes around every 4 or 5 years when it comes to technology. And it's supposed to cure all ills. It's supposed to solve all the problems, improve standards, and make teachers and students' lives a joy. With that in mind, let's kind of move on and just see what stage we're at. So currently in the UK, thanks, there's a huge divide between how AI is being used, ranging from the David Gain College in London, which is moving over to completely AI-based classrooms for teaching, replacing qualified teachers with AI-based teachers, and then just employing what they call learning colleagues to, I think that's to make sure that the students turn up and don't fight each other in the classroom. So everything from that level right the way down to across the rest of the country, where only 18% of teachers are reported using AI in the classroom so far. I think it's a scene that varies enormously, not only across the country, but from country to country and around the world. And just to get a sense of what teachers are using AI for, there was a survey done by Forbes of 500 teachers in the US. Ben, if you could skip me along a couple of slides. These were self-reporting, self-responding teachers. So inevitably, it's a sample that is heavily skewed. 60% of those 500 teachers reported that they had used AI in the classroom and had a very positive view on it. On the whole, 55% said that they believed it improved outcomes. But interestingly, somewhere in the region of 60% didn't believe that it would play a central role in the future, and only 30% believed that it would play a central role in education. And I think perhaps that reflects early experiences of using AI in the classroom. If we look at what the most popular uses of AI are, and some of the biggest concerns, we can see that they tend to get used for kind of educational games, for learning platforms, for grading and feedback. And in many respects, it seems like teachers are using it to try and add engagement to learning activities, and also to remove some of the hard grind of the administration of teaching. But there are big concerns that teachers have, the biggest one being plagiarism or the use of AI-powered essay generators for students to go home and get AI to write their essays. Now, Ben and I, we're talking about this and saying, actually, all AI is really doing there is what students have always done. It's perhaps just doing it slightly faster for them, because we know that students have always gone home and either originally copied from books, then copied from the internet, and now they're simply kind of requiring AI to copy from the internet. And when you think about it, things like ChatGPT, certainly the earlier versions of ChatGPT, were effectively operating at the level of a kind of 12-year-old student, when it was just randomly going and selecting information that it could find on the internet and assemble it in a pretty meaningless way. And I think that's one of the reasons that teachers perhaps find it difficult to identify whether something has been created by AI or by a 12-year-old, is because AI effectively operates at the level of a 12-year-old student. I think when you get to a higher level, 16 to 18-year-old students, it's pretty obvious if they've been using AI, because we would expect a much higher level of writing from that. That said, I thought it would be interesting just to try out an AI experiment for creating a lesson plan. We have an online resource called the Oak National Academy, and Ben, thank you. Within the Oak National Academy, it has a whole series of teaching resources for teachers to use, and it has now an AI assistant which will create lessons for you. So I set it a task to create a lesson on political ideas in the American Revolution. And it came back with a fairly reasonable quality kind of three-stage lesson, identifying Enlightenment thinkers, explaining how those influenced American Revolution leaders, and discussing the impact. And then it allowed me to download 5 lovely resources that it had made for me, including a lesson plan, a starter quiz, a slide deck, and so on, and worksheets. But when you actually look at what it's produced, it really is, it looks very similar to the kind of thing that a trainee history teacher would produce at their first attempt of planning a lesson. It's very, very basic. It's based heavily around information giving rather than around learning activity. It did ask me to grade its result, so I was rather kind. I gave it 3 out of 5, but I think I was being perhaps a little soft there. I did offer some feedback, and I'll talk more about that later on. But certainly in the UK, one of the kind of leading books which is influencing teachers is a book called The AI Classroom by Daniel Fitzpatrick. And I'll just highlight some of the examples that Daniel Fitzpatrick has in his book. But what I thought was particularly interesting, and again, I think this is reflective of how AI is capturing teachers' kind of imaginations, but perhaps they're not really reflecting deeply enough on how useful and what the AI is actually asking their students to do. The most positive review, we can see that 70%, in fact, nearly 90% of reviews graded it as either 5 or 4 star. The most positive review said it was a gem of a book, topical, timely, erudite, and practical. And the most critical review, apparently, complained that the only problem with the book was that the print was too large. So rather than critiquing its use of AI, it was complaining about the standard of printing. But within the book, it does offer some examples of how AI could be used for history. It talks about a creative reality studio tool, which allows teachers and students to create videos featuring a historical figure. For example, they could use an image of Abraham Lincoln and upload a script to describe his life and accomplishments. I think you can see that this is operating at a very low level when it comes to creation of historical information. It is operating at the basic information level rather than offering any kind of analysis. Another one that it recommends, Hello History, is interesting. Hello History itself is an AI app that allows you to chat with anybody from the past. Abraham Lincoln, Charles Darwin is there, Napoleon is there, Buddha, John Lennon, Che Guevara, and so on. And the idea is that students are able to ask questions and have a conversation with somebody from the past. Interestingly, a review of that was deeply critical, but it's interesting what it was critical about. It wasn't critical of the historical engagement and where the information was being sourced from. The critique seemed to focus more heavily on who it was that you were able to have a conversation with. And Jack Hobbs in this critique was offended by the fact that students would be able to have a conversation with Jesus or Hitler, or presumably both. Now, again, I think this is where currently AI, and critique of AI in the classroom is really missing the bigger picture. If we look at another example, this is from a review of by a web developer of a resource that allows an awe-inspiring depiction of an AI-guided time travel experience where users can witness key moments in history through a combination of virtual reality simulations, realistic 3D reconstructions, and AI-generated narratives, providing an unprecedented level of historical immersion. Now, that may sound fantastic, that we can allow our students to travel back in time and meet people and so on. But the problem with it is that it's not what history is really about. History is about doing the historical process. It's about asking questions and finding evidence from sources within archival collections in order to answer those questions. This approach implies that history is a done deal, that there is a knowable narrative which we all agree upon and which any student is able to access, and it takes us back to the idea that history just exists and is preformed, and as I say, that there's a single narrative that we can all access. I should say, we have been here before as well with the use of technology. As I said at the beginning, interactive whiteboards were supposed to be the next big new shiny thing 20 years ago. Reviews of that have shown that while it may improve motivation initially, the actual measurable impact on achievement is pretty insignificant. So that all sounds fairly negative. And I think the important thing is for teachers and educators to really think about what is AI there for and how can it help? And that goes back to, certainly in history, about a fundamental understanding of what history is and what history education is. History is inquiry, it is not narrative. And the danger, of course, is that at the moment, AI tends to operate at the level of narrative rather than at the level of inquiry. Now, that's not necessarily AI's fault, that's simply the way that we tended to program it and train it. So, the important thing is, can we teach AI in order to support students in doing history as inquiry rather than as narrative? Over to Ben.
Thank you, Andrew. Sorry, I'm just checking that I hadn't muted myself. I'm hoping everyone can hear me okay.
Yeah, you're all good.
Yeah, good. So, you know, what Andrew's hinting at there is this idea that the current sort of modes of AI, if you like, I suspect probably because most of them are being generated by people who are not from a history background, certainly in education, are looking at that substantive knowledge being the primary focus. But certainly here in the UK, we've been looking for a long time about the relationship between substantive and disciplinary knowledge. In other words, the stuff and what you do with the stuff. And as we know, students, generally speaking, aren't too bad at learning the stuff, but they find it very hard to do the kinds of things that we want them to do, basically analytical and discursive writing, making claims, developing those claims through argument, and then supporting them with evidence. So we've been experimenting in our schools a little bit about how we can help to sort of flag this up. And I just want to focus on two broad areas that we've been looking at. First of all, what Andrew's talked about, and obviously what most of the hype is largely about how we might teach with AI in history. But I personally have found that it's quite valuable and I think archives could really be exciting and interesting in this respect, in that they help teachers to teach their students about how we might teach about AI in historical scholarship. So we have an inspection organisation called Ofsted, and last year they came out with a report where they sort of said, on the whole, most of the history teaching is pretty good, but the students really are very, very hazy about what historians do and how they work and how they do it. So one of the things that we've been doing is just working on a couple of little lessons where we sort of say, look, you know, AI is just a bigger part of academic history as it is in many other aspects of work and entertainment and so on and so forth. And this is partly me trying to organize a bit of resistance to the relentless push of STEM sort of, you know, steamrolling over the humanities subjects in higher education and in secondary education as well. And so we're saying that, you know, what is AI useful for? How can it support the things that historians do? And from what I've seen, you know, these are sort of 5 broad areas where I think the AI is presenting historians with exciting opportunities that our students might be interested to know about. So authentication obviously is something that AI could be very good at. It's already being used a lot in art history in the art world. Categorization, you know, taking different forms of information and categorizing either by type. Obviously, that's very much up the sort of the street of archives, but possibly also in terms of, you know, potential uses, types of history that it might support. And then patterns and connections and, you know, hypotheses, yada yada. We're all well, many of us, I suspect, are historians and are familiar with this. So if we look at some of the things that we've been just showing to our students about AI in different fields of history, I've put these links here on the slides. Obviously, I'm very happy to share these slides afterwards. So I've just put the links there. I'm not going to click through them. I just thought it'd be useful to have them if you want to go and look further. But you can see some examples here of AI being used to help with authentication by you train it effectively looking at a known piece of art, and it learns the characteristics of that artist, etc., and it might be able to authenticate or indeed just identify, because obviously many collections have paintings, for example, where they don't actually know much about it. It might be a possibility to sort of name and label that piece that we don't know really very much about. We've also got things like translation, etc., has been mentioned already a few times today. But this is at the University of Oxford. They're using something called Ithaca in the use of subscriptions in ancient Greece. And again, it comes back to that earlier slide of the translation, obviously, but also then categorizing and looking for patterns that individual researchers might not have connected, you know, if they're two different researchers, for example. So if the AI is looking at this sort of thing, then it might spot patterns of some sort. We've got AI being used in combination with CT scanners to help us to try and find out what's in the mysterious Herculaneum scrolls. So essentially, these scrolls were obviously damaged in the eruption of Vesuvius, and they can't be opened because they just fall apart. But the CT scanners plus the AI are slowly and painfully deciphering what might be in some of them. Again, you know, showing students the massive scale of what AI can do in terms of reading, having been given some instructions by the historian. I sometimes think this is a bit like having a chariot with 30 horses that allow you to sort of to really motor through. And I thought this is was an interesting example where these researchers looked at the letters and between the patriarch and his leading sort of churchman in the Byzantine church in the 14th century, and also the minutes of the various meetings that they held. And it became very clear from the sheer scale of what was there, the people who spoke in the meetings were not necessarily the ones who were listened to or influential. I'm sure there'll be a few smirks over that in our various offices now. But this was really only possible because of the sheer scale of the reading that the AI was able to do. So again, this is just really another example of the same sort of thing. So again, there's lots of places I think, you know, I'd recommend going to have a read of examples, as well as the two previous presentations, of course, which were fantastic and really interesting about that. And I just think that a lot of our students would be interested. This might, for example, attract a student who's likes history, but maybe leaning more towards the sciences. You know, when we get to post-compulsory education, certainly in this country, 16 to 18, I know it's different in different countries. You know, it's opening up an extra dimension, another aspect of history that might appeal to a wider audience. So that's where we've got so far with teaching about AI, and I'm now sort of showing the ways that we've been trying to look at teaching with AI. And the fundamental point really comes back to Andrew's idea that I think many students tend to look at archived sources as tiresome and sort of unhelpful versions of the textbook. You know, I'd rather have the textbook because that does all the work for me and tells me what to think, sort of thing. Whereas when you give me these original documents, I don't know what to do because it doesn't tell me what happened in a straightforward way. And I think sometimes that's because they're not fully clear, again, on this issue of how historians work. So we started using this little framework over on the right-hand side called Rich Rabbit. Sometimes we just stick to Rich, but you can see it's an acronym where we say, you know, what are historians interested in? You know, they're interested in the reasons for things. They're usually interested in the impact. They're interested in change. They're interested in how things worked. They're interested in the responses of people to things, their attitudes and their beliefs and values and feelings. And as it happens, you then are able to get a cheesy little graphic of a rabbit with loads of money to help them remember that. Now, you know, the idea then is that they're going to a document, instead of sort of saying, what's the story? They're going there with a framework. Well, is this going to be more useful about reasons for something? Or is it going to be more useful about the impact of something? So, and that's the challenge that we sort of set them. So we tried a number of different things. So this is one example with GPT, which I'm hoping will behave itself. So here you can see this is a short extract up here of a report from Nazi Germany by opposition groups. And I've just simply said to GPT, how useful is this source to a historian studying Nazi Germany? And as you can see, it's coming back with some, you know, all sensible stuff, but it's rather generalized. It's very sort of, you know, if we take the authenticity and risk, the fact that it was written secretly and intended for exiled leaders underscores the risk. You know, so many of these comments could be applied almost to any archive source. And so what we then did is to say, okay, what happens if we give it a better briefing, a better prompt, essentially? And so we've said, you're an expert history teacher who helps students to assess how a source is useful to historians about a particular topic. Please analyze this source from Nazi Germany. This should be evaluated using the formula or acronym RICH, which obviously I've just explained. And as you can see, it quickly picked up on this idea of, okay, well, it's useful as the reasons, it's useful about impact, it's useful about change, it's useful about how things worked. So it's you know, fairly quick and fairly responsive in that respect. And the real learning here, of course, is not what we extract from that source. It's hopefully the impact on students where they're saying, well, if you ask better questions, you get better answers. So well, that's the theory anyway, at least. I also think something else that we've been trying is a resource that Andrew's team at the National Archives has been developing for a while, and he's got these source collections. So here's one example, which is about medicine on the Western Front during the First World War. And as you can see, you get a big collection of documents, original facsimiles, whoops, but you also get a transcript. And what you also get, I hope I'm getting some commission for this, Andrew, is a PDF, basically, which has all the documents and the transcripts on it as well. So playing about with some of these tools, this is basically chat PDF. I don't know if you're familiar with chat PDF, but essentially it works more or less the same way as chat GPT, except it doesn't go out onto the internet. It's confined to the PDF document that you're working with. So you can converse with it in effect. So as you can see, it's loaded up all of the documents. On we go. And it even suggests some questions as well. So I can click on that. And it seems to me that, you know, there's a danger, of course, with this is that, well, are we taking all of the hard work out of this, which, you know, sometimes is actually valuable. My impression I'm getting from certain students working with it is that the brightest students who, you know, who would have always got stuck into this still do so. The weaker students still struggle. And I just feel that we've expanded the number of students in the middle who might have been fazed or intimidated by collections of documents like this, and they're now prepared to engage with the collection. Yeah, and again, as always, they're starting to think hard about the quality of the questions that they ask. So you can see here, just again, some examples. You know, which sources would you recommend if I was interested in how doctors were trained? And so it scanned through and said, you can refer to source 33 for information on how doctors were trained. And again, I've said, do you think that 13 is more useful as evidence about causes of trench foot or the treatment of trench foot? It struggled a bit with this one. But I think you can see the basic thinking here. The basic idea is that it's a way in. It's a way for students to interact with a collection of documents. I mean, it would work with one document, but I think it tends to work better with collections. And again, just as a different example up here, this is a transcript of an interview with a veteran from the Korean War. So we used a different AI package to transcribe the interview, and then obviously we started getting a summary and asking frank questions in inverted commas. And I'd like to think that this isn't the same kind of low-level stuff that Hello History is, because again, we know who this guy is. This is not just going out randomly to the internet and picking up who knows what. We know this guy, we know his background. We could easily do more work on his unit if we want to go down that particular rabbit hole. So again, just another tool that I think is potentially interesting. And then one more tool that is similar along the same sorts of lines is the Google LM Notebook. So this is in a sort of beta version at the moment. So you can see, again, I've taken another one of Andrew's collections on significant people, and you load it into the LM Notebook, and then it basically gives you, again, a number of tools. It suggests some questions. It can draw up, I'm going to take my life in my hands now and see if it'll do a briefing without falling over. But you can see that it can take documents and it will do a contents page. It'll suggest questions. It will do a brief summary. It will do what's called a study guide, where it suggests how you might work your way through the collection of documents. This isn't going well, is it? Oh, no, not so bad. So you can see, it's done a quick summary for us. And obviously, again, like all generative AI, it learns as you work with it and use it. And of course, over here, we've got, well, this is a contents page, but it is effectively a catalogue of sorts. And I do think that the next frontier for us certainly is going to be playing about with catalogues. Clearly, the full catalogue is a bit intimidating for most ordinary students, but this is a resource that Andrew drew up a while ago, where he basically gets people to look at these two buildings and say how are they connected? What are the 6 degrees of separation? So he gives them a bunch of documents, and he then writes a sort of a friendly mini catalogue. But then we put the catalogue into GPT, asking it, well, what do you make of this? Which ones do you think is going to be most useful for this task about how these two things are connected? And it came back with, it was okay. Again, it gets better when it practices, and we train it and we give the feedback. But I just think that the friendly catalogues plus collections plus some of these tools, it's working reasonably well for us in pulling in an audience of students who up to now have often found original documents a little bit intimidating. Okay, so that's my lot. I don't know whether we have any.
Thank you so much, Ben. And Andrew, thank you both so much. I did see one question. There's several questions in the chat. There's a lot of questions in the Q&A. And one of them, Ben, I just thought I'd throw over to you to answer if you like. It says, isn't there a risk of students unquestionably absorbing what an AI presents without questioning it, but without the benefit of sources actually being verifiable like a textbook?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's the point I was trying to make at the beginning, that the way that AI tends to get used at the moment, so, being able to have a conversation with Jesus or Hitler, there is no way of verifying what is AI accessing in order to provide answers for that conversation. Hopefully what Ben has been demonstrating is that what we're trying to do is give the AI tools a verifiable collection of documents to work on. We know where they're from. We know the provenance of those and so on. And it, rather than suggesting that it's just possible to go and interview, Napoleon, and get a definitive answer. What we're saying is that in order to have a conversation, if you like, with Napoleon, it's necessary to go to primary source material, and this is where it comes from. You know, here in the case of how is Fort James and Tryon Palace connected, we're saying here are 15 documents, this is the provenance of those documents, and the AI is then suggesting what the utility of those documents might be, so that students can then interact with those documents and question them. So yeah, you know, we're trying to do exactly what the attendee, you know, the questioner is asking there, which is to provide verifiable sources. And I'm sure, you know, Ben as a textbook author, you know, will vouch that verifying your sources, even for a textbook, can be difficult.
Yeah, I would just add, I mean, I completely agree about the danger. I think there's a danger of getting a little bit out of perspective because, you know, as Andrew hinted earlier on, that kind of problem has been around for a long time, whether it's, you know, just simply copying things out of a book or copying and pasting from Wikipedia. One of the things I think that AI is also a little bit of a game changer, though, is it does all those things that I think technology has done for some time. But it's also, so Michael Wooldridge, who's the professor of computing history at Oxford, he always says that he thinks the real danger of AI is its ability to refine a message and locate and deliver to a vulnerable audience. You know, it's the fact that it doesn't necessarily generate new content, and I'm talking about, you know, scurrilous misinformation to a great extent. It is a game changer in its ability to find the people who are most susceptible to it and get it to them packaged in a way that they're going to find that most persuasive. And the only real antidote to that is to get people to say, well, how do you know? You know, what's you know, so if you take Perplexity, for example, which is an AI driven search engine, I mean, it's not perfect by any means, but it does at least cite the sources that it's drawn from. You know, so I would recommend people to look at that. But ultimately, yeah, you know, these are, they're new problems and they're existing problems. You know, I think that's the simplest way to put it in.
Thank you. Thanks, Ben. Carol, I just wanted to circle back with you. It looks like there's a lot of questions about the Citizen Archivist program at NARA. I wonder if you just want to let us know where to find out more about that.
Sure. So I put it in the chat, but also I will give you the URL. It's archives.gov/citizen-archivist.
Thanks, Carol. And there's all the information is on that website too. Well, thanks to all of our speakers. You've done a wonderful job this afternoon. And now the chair of our expert working group, Dr. Nampombe Sarambe, professor of the Department of Information Science, University of South Africa, will say a few words to close us out.
Thank you very much, Pam, and thanks to everyone. I can see the hearts, the claps. I'm sure everybody really enjoyed the session as much as I did. As we come to the end of this enriching webinar on AI and archives, advancing archival engagement, it is my privilege to extend a heartfelt thank you to all who contributed to the success of this program. And I particularly want to acknowledge the audience who are busy with the emojis at all times to show that indeed you were actively listening, and your questions and the chats, and I see people connecting in the chat, so this was just amazing. So first and foremost, I would like to thank our moderator today, Pamela Wright. Your guidance throughout this session was truly commendable. You kept us focused and ensured the flow of discussions. Thank you for skillfully managing the program and for your valuable time. To our esteemed presenters, your wealth of knowledge has left a lasting impact on all of us. You can see all the questions that came up. We are immensely grateful for the insights that you shared today. Johanna Smith and Anne-Marie Genin-Charette. We thank both of you for your innovative perspectives on generative AI guidelines. Your forward-thinking ideas gave us much to ponder about, especially now that more information institutions such as archives and libraries are integrating AI in their work practices. And your presentation set the right tone for our webinar today. Carol Lagundo, thank you for your insightful discussion on using artificial intelligence to improve access to Revolutionary War pension files. Your points on AI's growing impact on archival engagement were illuminating. Through your shared experiences, we learned about the vast possibilities we should take advantage of to get more people connected with valuable information that we have in our archival holdings. And lastly, but not least, Andrew Payne and Ben Walsh. Your expertise and practical examples were incredibly valuable. Your passion and commitment to this work were evident throughout your presentation. We appreciate your contribution, particularly in demonstrating how AI can influence teaching and learning of history, and more importantly, enhance critical thinking. Behind the scenes, a hardworking team made this event possible. To our organizing team, the Expert Group for Research Services and Outreach, in short, EGRSO, Pam, Joanna, Andrew, Maria, and Dennis. Your dedication and coordination were not just impeccable, but crucial. I am so proud and blessed and privileged to be a part of this amazing group. Your efforts from planning to organizing and ensuring everything ran smoothly were instrumental in the success of this event. I'd just like to highlight that our team is very, very active. I'd also like to inform you that our next public engagement is going to be at the Opening the Archives International Conference in Christchurch, New Zealand in October 2024. We did a very interesting survey on innovation and access, and we did this in 2020 and 2023, and we're going to share the findings of this survey at this conference and later on in the conference, the ICA conference in Barcelona next year. So this conference is organized by the Australian Society of Archivists, the Archives and Records Association of New Zealand, and the Pacific branch of the International Council on Archives, HARBICA. So registration is still open for that conference, and it will close at the end of this month. Our technical team, led by Maria Paula, and the team at the ICA Paris office deserves special recognition. The seamless experience we all enjoyed today were a testament of their expertise. Thank you for ensuring that the webinar ran without any hiccups and handling every technical detail with precision. Finally, our audience who are still pumping those emojis, thank you. Without you, all of this would have been a waste. At my last check, at 15, okay, it's afternoon in South Africa. So let's say 15 past the hour, we had about 511 people on the platform. And I was informed that we had 1,000 registrations. So it means close to 500 people could not make it because we had reached our limit. But as you have seen in the chat, the ICA have informed us that this webinar will be available on the YouTube channel. You can just get the links in the chat. If somebody missed it or you want to go back to it, please make sure that you check the YouTube channel and you find all the information there. But we are grateful for your time, your questions, and commitment to advancing your knowledge in this field. As we close, I'd like to say that the intersection of AI and archival engagement will only become more relevant in the future. I hope today's discussions have inspired all of you to think creatively and critically about the role AI will continue to play in our archival practices, and in this case, increasing awareness of our archival holdings and engagement. So let's stay connected and continue these important conversations in the days to come. Thank you once again, and I want to wish you a wonderful day ahead. Goodbye.